And we are live. Hi. Sorry about that. If you are at home watching the stream and you're interested in the announcements that you missed out on, feel free to check out our Facebook page where they will all be listed. In the meantime, let's get to our scheduled program, and I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Mario Chuman.
Hello, everybody. As Ryan said, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I personally apologize. Tonight, we're going to talk about sci-fi reboots, a subject that I find really fascinating myself. There we go. First things first, I would like to remind everybody that we are currently being live streamed. Because I'm going to ask for some mild participation to speak up when you are being called on, so that everyone can hear you. Standard stuff, just, be courteous. Second, more administrative stuff. I really like the Slack, which is why I'm plugging it in myself. It's really good and really convenient, and you can see we talk about a lot of really cool stuff. So just consider it, and there's the link right there. I think it wasn't on the Ryan's presentation, so there you go. RIT Store, that's Slack, which is on the crossword puzzles if you people are doing it. And now, I'd like to ask you all a question. In the past 5 years, how many of you guys have seen a reboot to a series that you personally enjoy? Okay, keep your hands up. Now, how many of you would say, lower your hand if you would say that the series, let me rephrase that. Keep your hands up if you think that the reboot itself did not properly address the themes of the series, or it destroyed the characters, or if it was just plain bad. And nobody lowered their hands. In fact, more people have raised their hands. What? Past 5 years, it doesn't really matter. It just recently. Have you seen the reboot recently that just ruined everything? All right. So I asked thinking to myself, I wanted to talk about this because I think this is very fascinating. Why is this phenomenon going on? A little bit. I think there's a lot of cynicism regarding it. So I'd like to approach it in a more optimistic kind of way. So, as you can see, there is a lot, and this I had to not include things myself. And as we're going to talk about later, I purposely didn't include other things, but these are just hard reboots of franchises that existed prior, and there are so many of them. And maybe you've seen them, maybe you liked some of them, maybe you hated some of them. And the one that I hate the most actually here is Man of Steel. I really hate Man of Steel, but fingers crossed for the sequel, right? And now, I asked myself when planning this mission, what is a reboot? And amazingly enough, this question, I struggled with this question the hardest, and it required the most amount of research from me. So I'd like to ask you guys, what do you guys think a reboot is?
It's when you take a series that already existing and start over from the beginning.
Okay.
Instead of making a sequel.
So instead of making a sequel, you start from the beginning.
Turn the computer off and on again?
I see. Yes, that is literally a definition that appears.
I don't think it necessarily can't be in the same theoretical continuity as the original, but it has to be sort of a new stream of products or movies or games or whatever. Just a new stream that started again, even if it's supposed to be the far future of what it's rebooting, it still is a reboot.
So by your logic, you're saying that Star Trek the 2009 is definitely a reboot?
Yes.
Okay. Justin?
Catching in on already established characters.
Aha, the cynical money approach. I like it. Anyone else? Ryan, you got something? Okay. So when I asked myself what is a reboot, I also asked myself what makes it different from a lot of other things like reboot, remake, reimagining. They always have an R in them. So I asked myself, what is the difference between them? So what I found, what I personally concluded when thinking about it, I wanted to have 3 really simple steps: precedent, continuity, deletion, and future intent. In fact, I had an epiphany when talking to Taylor yesterday when we were watching a movie called The Big Short, where we were talking about directorial styles. We were talking about why it's like a one-off kind of deal, movie that doesn't show enough of someone's style, and I thought that could be really applied well to the discussion right now. So precedent. So a series needs to exist before you can reboot it. It's simple as enough, but as you can see, there's going to be things later on that I'm going to address that kind of contradict it a little, so I find it really fascinating. So a series needs to exist and in order to get rebooted. But then, why? So a series exists, and like someone said, the continuity needs to go. You have a reboot, it needs to go, perhaps in the trash, perhaps, oh, it's being deleted by time travel, which is the case for Star Trek 2009, and even though it's technically not a reboot, X-Men Days of Future Past, which Kitty Pryde sends Wolverine back in time, so then he can kill, or he can stop someone from killing someone else, so then to avoid the darkest timeline, it's very convoluted.
Darkest line of X-Men 3.
Yes, X-Men Days of Future Past did retcon X-Men 3, and it kind of retconned the Origins, but then again, the continuity of Origins wasn't really there, kind of. A lot of people say it never really existed in the first place. So anyway, there is precedent, continuity deletion, and future intent. So future intent is my personal favorite. And for me, I get frustrated the most when reboots don't have future intent. Pretty much, it establishes that we are starting over, but we have the opportunity and desire to continue in the future. So I know this isn't strictly sci-fi. This is my realm of expertise, which is horror. Horror does this all the time. I blame Michael Bay for it because this production company does this all the time. They take a franchise, they reboot it, and then they throw it in the garbage when nobody watches it. It happened to Nightmare on Elm Street. It happened to Halloween, so Friday the 13th. It happened Friday the 13th. And technically the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even though they got a couple of more sequels that were all awful. But anyway, future intent. So when you're rebooting, you try to pretty much start fresh. You want to say, hey, we have the opportunity to throw it all in the garbage and let's try over, maybe, instead of, just throwing in the garbage again and just pretending it doesn't exist. So we can reboot it again, which is something else that I hate a lot. This is not a concrete definition. This is just my own personal feelings on the matter. If you disagree, you can totally let me know. But I wanted my definition for reboots to be simple, to be logical, and to be progressive, like step by step by step, which I think most things should be, because that's just how my brain works. My brain works best when I think of things in a logical order. So anyway, precedent. So back to horror movies for a sec. Without precedent, you're left with a remake. So talking about horror movies, the Halloween franchise had a lot of movies before it was rebooted. It had there's 6 in the main timeline, then 2 more, and then they rebooted it, and so the Halloween franchise is ridiculous. It had a ton of precedents, which is the word that I'm going for. There is a ton of movies beforehand before they threw it all in the trash. Coincidentally, I really like Rob Zombie's approach on Halloween, but anyway. So there's a lot of movies that exist in the franchise itself before being deleted. So that is what I believe that what makes a reboot exist. Unlike The Fly 1986, which does have future intent because it did get a sequel, an unnecessary sequel, but it did get a sequel, and also it did throw the original's continuity in the garbage. In fact, the thematic elements were completely different, but it was in essence a remake of the story. Pretty much what you need to know is a scientist gets transformed into a fly, and while the original was played more as a comedy, the 1986 version was played more as a sci-fi horror movie where someone is slowly transforming into a fly before your very eyes, and it is awesome. So does anyone have anything to say about like a specific remake? Not necessarily a deletion of a franchise itself, but just a remake of one beat of a story?
Remember there was this movie Troy that remade the Iliad?
Troy?
Yeah, it remade the Iliad.
Oh man, I think that's fascinating itself because that's a literary adaptation, which gets retold many times. Which I personally am not really sure about how I feel about literary adaptations, which I was going to talk about later, but we can talk about that now right now. Does anyone have any feelings in particular of if material adaptations of like literary stuff counts as being rebooted if you just do the same story again. Taylor.
I think that's a really interesting question. You could possibly look at it from the point of view of copyright. Like maybe it's if it's not a reboot if it's in the public domain, but if it's not, it is a reboot. That's the only possible way I can think of separating the two, because otherwise, yes, it is just a remake. It's a reboot. It's a reimagining. It's a remix.
So if I may go off what you're saying, so the constant Wizard of Oz movies, those aren't reboots. But for instance, if they decided to start with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, that would be a reboot because of the copyright.
That's literally the only way I can think of separating the two.
It's very weird, and this is why exactly we're talking about it. Justin.
Yeah, I was literally going to bring up the same type of situation. I feel like if you're making a movie based on a book that's literary adaptation, I wouldn't immediately look at it as a reboot. But then if you're making that same literary adaptation again, maybe it is a reboot.
Well, I think maybe the difference between an adaptation and a reboot is the difference in the medium that it's delivered in. If it was a book and now you're making a movie, that's an adaptation. But if it wasn't a movie and now you're making another movie, that might be a reboot.
Right.
But by the same token, sometimes there are reboots from books into movies.
So, you see, it's complicated, and just one final example before we get to Ryan. The anime Sailor Moon Crystal, is that a reboot? Because it is apparent, it's created to be more faithful to the source material, but it is still doing the same source material over, and it's not that old. I love this question. I spent a long time thinking about this. Ryan.
I was actually going to bring up The Hobbit, where it was adapted from a novel into an animated movie, and then adapted again into a series of movies, totally changing the tone.
Lord of the Rings and romance bullshit.
Yeah. And have you seen the animated movie?
I
Oh
have.
my gosh, yes, it's such a good time.
I hear it's very cute.
It's hilarious.
Can you repeat your question louder?
The Lord of the Rings had animated, two animated movies in the 70s or 80s that were both
So would you describe Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies as reboots? As a reboot?
Not even remotely, because, I mean, they're a bit that, can you technically reboot something that's based on, where both movies are based on a prior...
That is the question we're asking right now. We're trying to unpack that, because it is...
I haven't been paying attention.
It's okay. It's fine. It's a complicated question, and I love it. Go.
I would like to add to that Peter Jackson's movie adaptation of Lord of the Rings actually has a few subtle references to Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings movie.
So is it a reboot?
References do not reboot me.
So, just recently, the Ghostbusters is being rebooted.
Yes.
And they just released a trailer.
We're going to talk about the trailer. Don't worry.
But just to hint it a little bit, I heard it's the same story, same movie, but with a gender swap and like an entirely different direction. Like,
if you can hold your comments on that, just wait, because we are going to talk about it, because there's so many things to say about it. Sarlo.
Well, going back to if we adapt the book.
Can you raise your volume, please?
So going back to if we adapt the book, is it a reboot? I think that is interesting because the same thing we would define or include as like The Fly 1986 that I would make to something like the Game of Thrones TV show adaptation because they're in a completely different canon now. So I think in some ways it's a reboot. It's interesting that it's usually not thought of such.
So something that Cooper said that I thought was interesting was the thematic elements themselves. So he said that it's not really a reboot because you're tackling different themes. You're trying to say different stories. So maybe that's something to do with it. Also, the fact that we're also a different generation than what the original source material was, the original adaptation was. So maybe we don't see it as reboots because we're too young for that. So I don't know. This is not me dictating at you, because these are questions that I have not determined the answer for, and I would like to explore my inner processes. You guys want to
With the thematic thing.
Go ahead.
Interestingly, though, I keep going back to Game of Thrones because that's the one that I deal with a lot. thematically, they're actually really different. George R. Martin actually thinks they're main characters that are completely, like, that actually destroy his original creation, and is kind of irritated about some of them, I know. So they do break the thematic rules. So,
Okay. Awesome things there that I never even thought of. Taylor, go ahead.
I know it's not Sci-Fi, but while we're talking about this, so it's actually really interesting what's happening with Game of Thrones right now, because the series has now surpassed the books, because we're waiting for more books to come out. And it was that, so the series was its own thing, and the books were their own thing, and sometimes they overlap, sometimes they didn't. But everything had either already happened or hadn't happened in the book. And we finally reached a point in the narrative where we have surpassed the book in the timeline. So everything that comes out now may or may not be a spoiler for the books, and we don't know. Except for some information was confirmed to be spoilers in the after show, which everybody lost their mind about. And it was well deserved, because if you're reading the books, you don't want them spoiled by the series.
So I have a question for you on that aspect. We are not going to strictly limit ourselves to sci-fi, but we are using sci-fi as a jumping off point. About the Game of Thrones, the TV show surpassing the books. Because the story beats are being presented first in the show before the novels, can it be said that the novels are now becoming adaptations of the show itself?
I would argue very strongly no, but it's such a frustrating position to be in.
I can imagine.
If say you're watching a TV show, right? And lots of people watch TV shows as they come out, and you do your best to watch the show when it comes out, maybe you're a couple days behind, you try and avoid it. That's not usually a big deal, because you can just avoid anything related for a few days. But if you're reading a series of books, that's so much different, because I don't know when the next book's coming out, and I can't avoid internet spoilers for a show based on a series of books that I'm reading for 4 or 5 years. I'm going to know. I already know things that happen in the show, even though I haven't been watching the show.
Additionally, I think in this case you take author into account. The original author of Game of Thrones is still working on the books, theoretically, and the show. So I think that the show is still the adaptation / reboot. I don't really like all the reboot, yeah.
Sarlo, because I know Sarlo has a lot to say on the subject. I will get to you next.
So with that, I do not consider it an adaptation. I don't consider the books to be the adaptation, because even though we're going to get the show first, the show writers are entirely basing the next few seasons of the show off of what George R. Martin's given them. So it is adapting what he's given them. Whether or not we get the books or not first is, I think, irrelevant to the question of if the books are, or if the movie, if the show is source material.
Right. I was actually going to bring up The Walking Dead, which is in kind of a similar vein where it's almost like a reboot in that Robert Kirkman used it as an opportunity to fix mistakes he made in the past. Within the first 12 issues, he had introduced the antagonist and killed him off because he was moving. The pace was a lot faster because he didn't know how long the book would last. So when they introduced the show, that same antagonist lasted a lot longer because he knew that it would be a better story. And there have been talks forever about introducing a character from the show who was not in the comics that people are really big fans of, and introducing him into the comics. So at what point does one become the adaptation of the other?
I love this. And I would like to take The Walking Dead as a jumping off point. So what's interesting about The Walking Dead, it originated as a comic book and a comic book series, still going on, and it now had a television adaptation. What's interesting about it is that now the comics and the TV show exist in essentially parallel continuities, which is something that I love. For instance, because for example, the Telltale video games which are fantastic, by the way, are all in the continuity of the comics themselves. However, there is also another video game that is not based on the continuity of the comics, but it's based on the continuity of the show, which is really interesting. The fact that both of them are now pretty much like jumping off points for their related products, which I find very fascinating. For the same reason why Ryan spoke about why Walking Dead is fascinating. So I agree with you 100%. Anyone have anything else to talk about remakes? Go ahead, Ash.
I was just gonna bring up how like we have the original like Alice in Adventures in Wonderland book, then you have that movie adaptation, which is
Which movie adaptation?
the one by Tim Burton, Alice in Wonderland, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And then you also have the video game, which is like a horror genre, so they're all pretty different.
You do know that they're making a sequel to Tim Burton's one, right?
Yeah.
Through the Looking Glass. It's coming next year, I believe.
Would I consider like the Transformers, Sci-Fi Transformers reboot, or a adaptation of the TV show, or would you say they rebooted it in horror?
Personally speaking, I in fact now I'm kind of analyzing myself because of the points discussed right now. But I would consider it a reboot because it matches all of the criteria that I have for it. It has precedence, it has continuity deletion, and it also has future intent, as you can see by the 4 existing Transformers movies. The 5th one that's going to come out, apparently it's going to be about Bumblebee, and apparently Michael Bay is not going to direct the Bumblebee movie. Maybe there's hope. But I wouldn't have my fingers crossed if I was a Transformers fan. Anything else before moving on? Justin.
So what would we consider Mad Max Fury Road? Because it doesn't connect in any way to the timeline and isn't really intended to.
To be determined, the director doesn't know yet.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So I love that question. In fact, I'm going to talk about that later.
Awesome.
I was gonna make a reply, because I actually did do something you were saying, but I'll.
Okay, yeah, if you want to hold your comments on that, that'd be fantastic. If you want to talk about it now, we're good too.
I was going to also comment on
Okay.
I just want to comment about that in general, where I think because enough time has passed, they could as a reboot. So, and if you go back to Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, are they adaptations or reboots? They're adaptations because they're happening within the same time period.
Okay. So would you say that the Stephen King new movie, I think it's called Dark Tower, with Idris Elba being cast on it, would you say that that is an adaptation, even though it's not in the same time period?
I don't know nearly enough about that.
It's okay. That's the first thing that popped in my head. All right. Anything else? All right. So we were very interested in talking about that one slide. Oh, and we went way too far. Okay, so we were so interested in talking about that previous slide that computer fell asleep, which is, I think, a good sign. Next thing, continuity deletion. Without continuity deletion, you're left with an alternate timeline. So what I used Star Trek because I think the Star Trek reboot is a fascinating example of continuity deletion because it doesn't really throw it in the garbage, more like it puts it in its own pocket universe kind of in a deal, like as an alternate path to the new story that is being told. Whether or not the new Star Trek show is going to adhere to that, of which continuity is left to nobody knows yet, which I think is really interesting. I can go through either way. I'm really interested in seeing how the new show approaches the question of how do you deal with a reboot in a different medium after it exists and is popular. When right there, right next to it is an example of it not working in as a reboot, which is Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. If you don't know some comic book background, Jason Todd, which is the second Robin, he died and Joker killed him. And in this continuity, Batman pretty much gave up. He was like, I'm out. And it didn't delete the continuity. It was just as this is a other story that could happen. And it is very popular, and it is kind of interesting. I don't want to say it's good, even though a lot of people love it, mostly because the author ended up being crazy and racist, and he wrote awful things about poor people. And knowing what he did, knowing what the things that he said makes reading his older material really awkward. It's just awful. If you don't know, Frank Miller also wrote Sin City, Dark Knight Returns. Fun fact: the third book, the second sequel to The Dark Knight Returns is called The Dark Knight Master Race. So that is what we are dealing with when we are talking about Frank Miller. But yes, The Dark Knight Returns does in fact adhere to having precedents. It did have a series beforehand, and it also has future intent because there is also books, sequels that come off of it, and it's intended to continue on as a series, but it does not have continuity deletion. Therefore, it is an alternate timeline. Does anyone have anything to say about alternate timelines? Besides the obvious joke about Super Mario 64. Thank you, Taylor. In the back.
The Back to the Future Saturday morning cartoon.
I don't know anything about that, so you're going to need to explain. Okay. Anything else anyone has to say about alternate timelines? Thorlo.
So are we continuing, are we counting alternate timelines as reboots? Because some reboots don't even mention if it's in the continuity, they just say nothing.
You see, I'm saying that alternate timelines are not reboots because they need to delete. If they say nothing, I think that's really interesting itself. But I would say that they would delete it if they just flat out ignore the things that happened beforehand. But it also is an interesting case. Do you need to mention that you are deleting everything in order for it to be a reboot? Have you seen the new Fantastic Four movie? Has anyone here seen it? No. It was terrible. But they didn't necessarily mention, hey, we are doing this all over again. But they did repeat the events of the origin story in the first two Fantastic Four movies. They have made 4 Fantastic Four movies, and even though a director I really like, Josh Trank, made the most recent Fantastic Four movie, it was still terrible. And I know Joe has seen it, right, Joe? What? Fantastic Four, the new one. It's awful. Taylor.
So, Star Trek's timeline is really interesting.
I love it. That's why I used it.
Done an entire mission on it in the past last year, I think. And part of the interesting question about it is, so this new timeline was started because somebody went back in time.
Yes.
And that changed, that course of events changed it drastically. The thing is, this is a universe where time travel already exists, and where time travel has already been used to fix the future. So the time travel, maybe Zachary has more to say on this, but the time travel creating a new parallel universe continuity is really questionable in that case, because when Star Trek 4, the Voyage Home, One of the Whales, wouldn't that have caused a new parallel timeline as well? But instead they just fixed the future.
So I have a question about that.
Yes.
So since the existence of, I think his name is Spock Prime.
Yes.
So
confusingly, Spock Prime.
So he still exists, and he is still continuing the story forward. So does that mean that Star Trek 2009 is a sequel to the Star Trek series, or is it a reboot? Because there is still an established character with the entirety continuity behind him. Does that mean that Star Trek 2009 is a sequel, or is it a reboot? That's exactly why I put it here, because I think it's so fascinating, and I have no easy answers, and I know Zach has the answer.
That's not necessarily a definitive answer, but you mentioned a big part of what makes something a reboot is intent. And I think part of the reason that people consider things like arguably what happened with the Star Wars retcon and what's happening with Stargate to be reboots, rather than in the case of Star Wars purely a continuation, and in the case of Stargate a remake, is because of that intent to continue with the altered universe they're creating. And I think that's why people consider the J.J. Abrams universe to be a reboot, even though it isn't actually throwing out the old continuity, and in fact references it in a couple cases. Because even though, yes, it is a continuation of our old Spock's storyline, it's intentionally creating a lack of a time loop in its time travel mechanics to tell a new story that talking about it outside its universe, is part of the plan to make these new movies in this new universe to make more money independent of the old series. Obviously, we don't know whether the new TV series is going to continue that. personally, I hope it doesn't, or at least if it does, I hope it's not continuing these versions of Uhura, Spock, and Kirk in the game, just because it's intentionally overwriting and doing different things with things we already know. I think what makes things like First Contact, Star Trek First Contact, and Star Trek For the Voyage Home different is that they were intentionally structured so that there was time travel, and this is true even for some of the time travel episodes of the different Star Trek series. There was time travel, but there was nothing to suggest that it wasn't a stable time loop. That could have been what always happened and what was always going to happen in that one thread of time. There was no overriding of permanent continuity the way it works this time.
Okay. I like a lot of your points. I'll get to it. One of the things that I like, I find myself more of a defender of the Abrams Star Trek movies than most. But one thing that I really like about the Star Trek reboot and its sequel, Into Darkness, is the fact that instead of taking the opportunity to just do everything all over again, they've tried to do everything pretty much all over again, except this time with smaller twists in them. This Into Darkness did this really well. I think they did it really well by doing the role reversal with Kirk and Spock at the end. I think that's really cool by the fact that they are referencing the fact that there are pretty much like cycles and still key moments that have to happen in this continuity, which I personally really love. And I would love to see Star Trek Beyond secretly be their attempt at search for Spock. Taylor.
Okay, so I have a couple things that are interesting to say about what you just said. One, narratively, it's kind of a questionable decision to make because you have a character in that universe who already knows what all of these key themes are going to be. Spock Prime already knew that Khan was out there someplace and had the same potential to do horrible things, and yet did nothing about it. And you can argue whether or not that's a character, but it's really interesting narratively to make those decisions. Additionally, I just wanted to comment on the way they did that entire sequence where they reversed Kirk and Spock from the scene from
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness, the scene from Wrath of Khan, because that part is not the only part that is a. I prefer the term homage because it's nicer. There's more to that scene that is a blatant homage to the original. Shots, the way that the ship is built, the trail that Spock takes to get to Kirk. And I noticed that the first time and I was like, oh my god, are they going to do this? Are they going to do this? Because I'm a nerd. Another interesting thing about Star Trek, though, is that it's got parallel universes without time travel. So we know that we can time travel and not create a parallel universe, maybe. We know that we can time travel and create a parallel universe. And we know that parallel universes, such as the one in Mirror Mirror, already exist, and we can go to those too.
The Mirror Universe is actually an alternate timeline.
Yeah, is it?
That was the first
Oh man.
From what time?
Alternate timelines, parallel universes, is exactly what we're talking about.
Star Trek.
Yeah, it was like shown to.
Zachary, can you speak up?
Sorry, the earliest point at which the Mirror Universe is shown to be a branch that I know of is where you see the alternate universe version of Star Trek First Contact, where instead of shaking hands with the first Vulcan on Earth, Zachary Talker shoots him. And you think he's going to go for the handshake, and then he pulls out the gun.
I feel like I just watched a Star Wars movie about that.
Justin.
Yeah. There are also additionally more universes in Star Trek referred to as the Mirror Universe, which all branch from Mirror Mirror, which is interesting because they establish a Mirror Universe, then they make multiple parallel universes from the Mirror Universe, and then in the prequel they establish the beginning of that Mirror Universe. So
it sounds
it's
very
not necessarily connected.
The point is, Star Trek did it first.
Okay. It sounds very delicious and entertaining.
But also,
in the same vein that I love.
If I had to guess, I think Mirror Universe is less about like, yes, this is the other universe. The way, like, if I don't know how many people have seen Fringe, but Fringe very much sets off. There is our universe and there's this one other universe, and it's really only just about those two. I don't think Star Trek is intended to say there is only our universe and this one other. I think Mirror Universe is used as an easy way to explain to perhaps a more casual viewer or someone who's not as much of a nerd as Taylor or myself, the concept of a parallel universe.
Hold that thought for just a moment. Does anyone ever have anything else to say about alternate timelines or parallel universes? That joke was made already.
No. Damn it! Actually, I was going to talk about DC Comics.
Ooh.
Which is a whole can of worms.
Well, it's already been opened, so.
So once upon a time, writers were allowed to create whatever universes they want. Then DC decided that was too many and made one universe.
On Crisis on Infinite Earths. That was
Yes. Then came Infinite Crisis, which reset the timeline again. Then came 52, which established 52 parallel universes. Then Flashpoint, which converged them all into, which eliminated most of the parallel universes and combined Earth 1, Earth 2, and the universe in which a different line of comics was produced by Time Warner, all converged into the new 52.
So Ryan, question for you. Who was responsible for Flashpoint? Who destroyed the timeline?
Jeff Johns.
That's not the answer. Okay, the author, obviously the author destroyed it. Who destroyed it?
That was Barry Allen.
Who is?
The Flash.
Boom! We're talking about the Flash now. Fantastic. Nice. It was all.
I didn't get it on the crossword because there's a space in the crossword puzzle.
I apologize for that, but
Is that a problem here? You have spaces in here?
okay.
He has many spaces.
Today I learned that we're not supposed to have spaces.
Hey, Mario, just like all of us, is really passionate about space, okay?
Okay. Now that I like that sleight of hand because not only does it talk about my next one, but it also is an answer to the crossword puzzle. So I thought it was nice. Thank you, Ryan. So with future intent, you can have like as I said before, you can actually have the foundations for a reboot to continue telling the story in the future. And without it, you have something that I find very fascinating: a prequel relaunch. So before that, we're going to talk about what The Flash does, and if anyone's caught up on The Flash, you will know that this inclusion in this particular slide is very fascinating. No spoilers, of course, but it's not quite what it seems. And Ryan knows, of course, because he's caught up on The Flash. But anyway, so what about the stories that that pretty much delete or ignore continuity, and also have precedence? For example, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is kind of a prequel, kind of a reboot to the original Planet of the Apes. But however, Planet of the Apes itself had a prequel. I think it had more than one prequel. I'm not quite sure about it. I think it was
a whole series.
So not only that, so Rise of the Planet of the Apes is set to be before the original, so it can technically be a prequel. However, it treats some things with continuity. However, it deletes other things in continuity or ignores them. So where does that stand? Another example, outside of science fiction a little bit, the new Devil May Cry game, DMC Devil May Cry, because fun with acronyms. The character of Dante it's pretty much a prequel story. However, it ignores a lot of the continuity of the original series, which fans really hate. So, what happens when you're telling a story that is set before a known story that ignores pretty much everything? I find that fascinating. Does anyone have anything to say about prequel relaunch? Sarlo.
So, I don't know if you know, Star Trek 2009 was originally made to be a prequel, not a reboot.
I did not know that.
Very originally, very early on. So, but at one point during development, it was a scroll rebooting.
Okay.
So it actually does fall into this.
Okay, that's really interesting.
It is also set canonically before TOS in a way, in a separate category. Where the timeline split in 2009 is before TOS.
Okay.
TOS, but after Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah. So That's why I really like talking about the Star Trek. I think it's pretty much the poster for sci-fi reboots because there's so many layers of how interesting it is when talking about reboots themselves. Another example is the movie Prometheus. Prometheus it tackles the prequel story. However, there's a lot of things that don't necessarily connect well with the established Alien movies. And on top of that, they intended Prometheus to continue on. For example, Ridley Scott is still going to make the Prometheus sequel, but he's not calling it Alien Covenant, but Neil Blomkamp, who created District 9 and Chappie, which we saw as a club, he is supposed to make the Alien sequel. So one director is working on continuing the original story, while the guy who made the original story is making the prequels. So I think it's very confusing. But anyone have anything to say about Prometheus or Alien or any prequels that are particularly interesting when it comes to continuity?
So I haven't seen Prometheus, but I know a lot from my friends, just osmosis. From what I know, Ridley Scott really wants it to be just a straight prequel, but it's interesting because the higher corporations, because the company he did Prometheus with doesn't technically own the rights to Alien in the case for now.
Well, they're calling it the next one Alien Covenant, so...
Okay, because I know the reason why the sequel was developed held for a while was because of corporation issues, because the company ended up doing it with did not hold the right to Alien, so they couldn't directly say it's an Alien prequel. Which, yeah, I'm doing this off of, like, hearsay.
Of course, I understand.
So from what I understand, it's like it was up in the air for a while, up until only recently it was confirmed to be looking to. I don't know if it's reboot, but I don't know. I don't think it's reboot, but I don't know the Prometheus.
So similar to the Star Trek comment that you made, what Prometheus is, it originally wasn't meant to be a prequel. However, they changed it into being a prequel mid-development, and that caused a lot of continuity errors. So they pretty much just ignored a lot of the continuity statements that the Alien franchise made, which makes it very interesting to speak about. Taylor.
Is it time to talk about Star Wars yet?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
While I do find the Star Wars prequels to be interesting, they do treat the originals with continuity. They don't ignore their existence. In fact, I think one might say that they try to stick too hard into them, to sticking to the originals, and we all know how that went.
Or they modify the old movies to be consistent with the new movies.
And that's another can of worms. What happens when you have a reboot of a movie, and then you re-release the original work and change it to be more in line with the reboot? I can't name an example of that happening, but the thought of that, trying to make an original source to be more in line with a newer source, is very interesting. Anyone have any examples of that, or nightmare scenarios of it?
The only example I can think of is the remake of the original Tomb Raider.
Yes.
And this is before the whole new Tomb Raider 2013.
Wasn't it called Anniversary?
Yeah, it was called Anniversary.
What are you pretend pretty much original source material being redone to establish having it more in line with newer materials in that same series.
It's the original Halo.
Yes, in the Halo Master Chief Collection, correct? I actually own the Master Chief Collection. My personal favorite part of it is pressing the select button so you can change the art style from the original into the remake. I think it's so much fun.
I mean, my go-to example is that for superheroes, they will keep reinventing the origin story to modify it to whatever the current story is, such as Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern, who was playing.
He's gay now, right?
Yes, he is. They just kind of was like, hey, Green Lantern's gay now, and all my money's on Power Ranger. But Alan Scott was originally, his lantern was all magic-based, and it didn't work on wood because reasons. This was not,
This was not established. So once they established the Guardians of Boa as this like supreme force, they reinvented the origin of his lantern to actually be a prototype of the motivator.
Okay. We're going to talk more about comics later. But anyway, if I may take a step back before taking a step forward. With the Flash, in case you didn't know, there was a show for the Flash in the 90s, and they started over and with a new Flash show to fit pretty much in the Arrowverse, which is something that I hold really deep to my heart, because I love Arrow and I love Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow is great too. And in fact, you guys might like Legends of Tomorrow because it is definitely sci-fi. It's Doctor Who, it's superheroes, and the superheroes pretty much, ignore everything that the Doctor is telling them. He's like, no, don't destroy the timeline, and the superheroes are like, yes, we're going to destroy the timeline. It's fantastic. Anyway, so does anyone have any comments to say before I move on with pretty much my loose definitions of what a reboot is, or examples of things they want to talk about?
I was just out of curiosity. Has anyone heard anything about this Westworld TV show? I guess the reboot of the old movie.
I have heard of it. Yes, that's all I know about it. I'm sorry. That's fine. If you want to talk about it, you can go ahead.
I mean, it's an interesting concept. I don't know how they're going to follow the original movie. But I mean, the whole story is like machines and an amusement park that's fully being sentient. So I think it'll be an interesting concept to see how they do with this.
Okay. That does bring into the fact of whether TV shows that are pretty much doing the movie all over again counts as reboot, which goes into our earlier discussion about literary adaptations. Pretty much, is Hannibal a reboot of the Silence of the Lambs story? I know Silence of the Lambs wasn't the first movie in the series, but it was pretty much the one everyone knows about. And Taylor, raise your hand.
Hannibal specifically also could be considered people rewatching movies, I think.
He does.
Is it in continuity with the movies? I haven't seen Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs is way later.
I don't wait.
But you should argue it's out of continuity just because not all the same character dynamics are there, and I think I feel like there are one or two things that are told differently in the show and the movie, and
I do know the exact answer. It's a bit of both. It's weird. At one point, Red Dragon it crosses over with Red Dragon, which is the original book, which was not the original one adapted, by the way.
I forget the name of the original movie. I just saw Silence.
The original movie was Silence of the Lambs.
No, that's the second movie in the series.
Red Dragon. So Red Dragon chronologically takes place before Silence of the Lambs. The production schedule was Manhunter, which was the original name of the novel that Red Dragon is based on. So they did a movie adaptation of Manhunter, then an unrelated movie adaptation of Silence of the Lambs, then a remake of Manhunter retitled Red Dragon, which was canonical with Silence of the Lambs.
And Red Dragon, as Tom says, is the canonical first book in the series, which is why I'm referring to it. Yes. But interestingly, Hannibal, the TV show, at one point goes into Red Dragon canon, but it is different than the original canon. So is both.
I love this. This is exactly what I was looking for. Taylor!
The point I was going to make is this really decide that TV shows that remake movies and basically go beat for beat. That's something that anime tends to do in reverse a lot. There will be a whole series and then it'll be like, well, here's the movie, and it'll be like, oh yeah, some Gurren Lagann movie. Great, I'll go watch it. Oh wait, it's just a series, heavily abridged. And
so, I was just gonna say, what about Madoka Magica, which does the two movies do retell the story of the anime, and then they make another movie that is in continuity with the movies, but not necessarily the TV show that they came from originally.
Which is
Yes. That feeling, Taylor, is exactly why I'm standing here in front of you.
But that feeling is monochromatic anyway.
Oh, of course. No spoilers. No, of course, no spoilers. If you haven't seen it, Madoka Magica, like I don't even watch that much anime, and I think Madoka Magica is fantastic. Sarlo.
I won't go into like specifics, obviously, but from what I know, the first two movies that are, I guess, a reboot, and are the canon to the third movie, which is kind of the sequel. The story, for the most part, is exactly the same, and most of their changes are actually to the art. So I haven't seen the movies.
I've only seen the third movie.
So the first two movies, the only thing they do is they do one thing that actually better explains a certain part of the anime, and that's the only real change you can think of off the top. And other than that, it was off art and some minor changes here and there.
Okay.
So it is same story. It's weird. It's
Yeah.
It's more like an HD remake.
Having seen at least the first movie and some more, the movies are pretty much the anime, and the third movie is still kind of. Is it mean to say unnecessary? It felt unnecessary.
I did not like the third movie, but then again, I thought it was kind of really awful.
I didn't feel like the movie versions of the anime were changed to help the third movie. The third movie was still unnecessary.
So does anyone have anything to say about TV shows to movies or movies to TV shows? Anything else to say about it?
And a TV show? Dragon Ball Z was re-released as Dragon Ball Z Kai, which was almost identical, except they cut out a lot of the filler episodes. Would you consider that the same series?
I didn't know that exists, and now that I know that it exists, I'm gonna go watch Dragon Ball Z again.
To me, that sounds like an abridged series, but not in the way they
Not like
ha.
Exactly.
It ended the Cell Saga, which makes sense. I really like the Blue Saga.
Anything else before we go on? Okay. So, with all of that being said, with all of the facts that the definitions, my question now is why? Money. Okay. That was the perfect answer because I have a video to show that is very cynical. Also, I'm not going to make you guys watch the whole thing. Oh, wow, it's not showing up at all. Oh, no. I clicked on it. I'm not going to show the whole entire, and also, there's slight profanity, but, okay. We're not going to watch the whole thing.
You tell me that there are no remakes this whole year?
This was made last January.
Terminator remake.
Mad Max remake.
Point Break remake.
Poltergeist remake.
National Lampoon's Vacation remake. Was that a favorite? That happens.
That was Black Ribbon.
Also known as Box Office Cancer.
Fantastic Four remake.
Batman remake.
Superman remake.
Spider-Man remake starring Tobey Maguire.
Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman remake.
Catwoman remake starring Halle Berry.
Hunger Games Part 2 remake.
The Flintstones remake starring Lady Gaga.
Galaxy remake.
The 1987 World Series remake.
Mask remake. This time Cher plays Mask. No, this can always count on really exciting superhero movies from Hollywood. They have their films planned out for the next 37 years, and I'm sure they'll never ever get stale.
Movies like
most anticipated film of 2015.
Are you talking about Get Hard, starring the elderly comedian Will Ferrell? No. The Gem movie, a film based on a forgotten 1980s cartoon show for little girls and elderly gay men? No. The Cinderella reboot? No. The Jungle Book reboot?
No, damn it. I'm talking about the Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
Oh, that movie. To be honest, I'm not all that excited about that. But I know someone who is. Oh yeah! Star Wars! I fucking love Star Wars! Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Okay, so in case you don't know, that's Red Letter Media. They did the Star Wars prequel reviews that are fantastic, and pretty much I love them. I think that they are a great source of comedy and film education. Anyway, I love their brand of humor, by the way. So what I thought, I try to make the why, as not as cynical as possibly I could make it. I could plaster a $ sign right there, and you guys would agree with it. But I wanted to think more in depth. Why? So right now, from the very beginning, brand name recognition. People like names that they understand. They like being comfortable, and hell, we're gonna watch them anyway. It doesn't really matter if it's new or original. Like, how many of you guys has honestly seen Ex Machina? 4 people. How many of you guys have seen what was the last Marvel movie? Ant-Man. How many of you guys saw Ant-Man? A lot more hands. So we're gonna go see the movies anyway. And we're going to see the future of Marvel movies. Some of us are going to see the new DC movies, because I know not a lot of people here like DC, but my point is that we like what's comfortable to us, which is understandable. New things are kind of hard and scary, and it takes more effort to go find something that you might not necessarily know in advance. And you have a point that you really want to say.
We are going to see movies that get bad reviews nonetheless. So even if there's brand name recognition, if any of the movies that have brand name recognition is also a movie that gets bad reviews, why wouldn't we go see it?
That is a good question, and however, there's precedent for both movies that agree with you and not. Nobody saw the Fantastic Four reboot, even though the reviews for it were poor, but a lot of people wanted to see the Amazing Spider-Man reboot, which also had not great reviews, but a lot of people saw that movie. Not so much the second one, but I think the point is that it really depends on the property itself. Like The Lone Ranger, nobody really saw it, and it had terrible reviews.
Enough people saw it to warrant a sequel?
Wait, what? That is news to me, and I am going to say I don't believe you. I'm just flat out saying if you look it up, I will eat my hat on screen.
Hang on, I will look this up.
I will eat my hat on screen. Joe said that they are making a sequel to the Lone Ranger movie, which was one of the biggest box office bombs in history.
Ryan, going back to brand name recognition, do you think that's why it's nearly impossible to get a new hero taking over the mantle to stick in superhero comics? Like, we've had people other than Steve Rogers be Captain America, but it always goes back to Steve Rogers.
I like the Steve Rogers comic because right now in the comics themselves, they had they had Sam Wilson take the mantle of Captain America, and now Captain America is going to take it back. I am almost certain that there are definitely examples of this. In fact, I just remember now, Captain Marvel. Who remembers boring old Captain Marvel?
Oh, okay. I'm like, do you mean Captain Marvel or Shazam?
So
Captain Marvel.
they haven't officially confirmed it, but most of the cast had signed on for several movies when they first got their contract.
I will not eat my hat. Well, I don't have a hat, so it wasn't gonna happen
I was
anyway.
just reading, they're all signed on for sequels at the moment, but
That movie's never happening.
yeah.
So, passing the mantles can stick. In fact, it's probably news to a lot of you guys that there was originally a Captain Marvel before the Carol Danvers. Yeah, and nobody really liked him, and he was pretty much in existence as a pissing match contest because there was a Captain Marvel character that existed that DC had acquired from some other publisher that I was named that I currently forget. but his name was Captain Marvel, and then now they just call him Shazam, and he's gonna have a movie. So some context. Sarlo.
So I don't know how much it is brand name recognition. I think it's actually, there's a very clear lack of the movie industry trying to do anything new at the moment. Because the only movies I can actually think of in recent memory that are new IPs that were somewhat successful are Ex Machina, which was not very well advertised, ever, and John Wick, which is going to be.
You see, I disagree with that because there are a ton of movies that are being released that are just not blockbuster movies. If you're talking strictly about blockbuster movies, I can somewhat agree with your point, but also you got to look at the fact that the movie industry doesn't focus just on the months of May to September. There's a bunch of other months where a lot of like art house movies exist that aren't necessarily intended to make in a ton of money. So we need to think about the fact that we have more scope than just blockbusters. And I know we talk a lot about blockbusters and not really much art house stuff here, but I would disagree with the fact that Hollywood just ran out of ideas because they are making a lot of other ideas, except that they are sticking with what sells to be their big ones.
All right, 2 points. One, art house science fiction is something we need to do here.
I was just thinking that.
Okay.
And second, it depends on what you mean by trying something new, because whenever I hear people say we're trying something new, what I basically hear is we're taking a familiar formula and putting some twist on it, and it's a version, and it's neat, but I always find this idea that new means a completely new story or something like that is sort of a weird way of viewing what's new, because almost all stories are built out of the same mechanics. But the whole idea of the shared universe is still relatively new, even if it's been proven by now. And now there's going to be a new attempt at bringing video games over into movies. And even though those are still going to be essentially generic stories, that is still theoretically a new thing Hollywood is doing.
And I always think that I don't think that Hollywood is as stubborn as people make it out to be. I think that they are actively trying to do things differently. However, they're still tied in the capital-based economy that we have, so they're obviously trying to make money. But there's a lot of dedicated people who are really trying to do something different, even with reboots, with remakes, with tired old sequels. The fact that there are still people who have a ton of passion for what they do and a lot of driving force behind it, which we're going to get to later. But also, second bit, ease of access. Ease of access is something that I really care about. As a game designer, I care a lot about accessibility in video games, allowing the average Joe on the street who has never touched a video game in his life to be able to touch a game, get to learn it and have a good time. I think comics do this the most, and we're going to talk about comic reboots, but comics constantly relaunch to have a #1 issue in order to attract people who are like, I've never read a comic before, and be like, hey, maybe I could start here. So what reboots do is they create a nice starting point for a franchise in particular. Me personally, my first Star Trek anything was Star Trek 2009, and I'm pretty sure I am not the only one. And I have since then gone back to watch some of the older stuff now that I have gotten into the franchise and be like, hey, this is pretty cool. I wonder what else is there. And I'm pretty sure that has happened to at least some of you here. Has anyone entered through a reboot and therefore went back in back to the original source to find enjoying themselves? Taylor.
Star Wars.
Star Wars. We're going to talk about Star Wars.
So I know I'm an odd case for this, but I actually don't do that. I actually look at if something like reboots coming out, I actually go out of my way and look at some material first. But in a way, I guess it's advertising to me, so.
So you watch Flash, right?
I don't actually.
Okay. Oh,
but I'll give you a better example. For Jessica Jones, I think you actually knew about this. I refused to watch TV show until I read an entire arc on Jessica Jones.
So what you're telling me is that, since I know for a fact that you watched Doctor Who, right? So you're telling me that you watched the original 26 seasons
I
before.
watched most of them, actually.
That is very impressive. I applaud you for that. Ash had her hand up.
Hannibal.
Okay, so Hannibal? Oh, so you started onto Hannibal, and then you're like, hey, I should probably watch the movies because I like the source material. Fantastic, because that is a great example, and it wraps up what we were talking about earlier. Zachary.
I kind of do a mix because when it's possible, I try to take Saul's approach. I do especially with books just because I've seen some really awful movie adaptations of books, and so I kind of want to experience the story as it was meant to be. But obviously, in other things like comics, I recognize there are decades of material that I don't have the time to read through, and the movie is never quite meant to retell the story exactly because they want it to not just retell what comic fans already know. Interestingly with Doctor Who is I actually had seen some old Who before I got into watching new Who, as much as I'd seen an episode here or there or a clip here or there of new Who before I got into it. And I kind of, when I was first getting into it, watched a bunch of new Who, and then watched a bunch of old Who, and then watched a bunch more new Who.
That's a pretty interesting approach. Taylor, you had your hand up?
It wasn't relevant.
Okay. Anyone else started with an earlier, with a reboot or a relaunch or remake, and then went back and to see the earlier stuff? Okay. That's fine. The last point is fan passion. Fans love their franchises. That's what makes them fans. So you have the positive word of mouth that already exists with the property. If you redo it again, that passion is still there. So if you're going to make a brand new movie, for instance, you're not going to have that already existing fan base. Perhaps they're interested in the creative team. For example, when Guillermo del Toro directed Pacific Rim, he had a dedicated fan base for his movies already. However, that is nothing compared to the fan base of actual people who are like, this franchise is something that I love and I want it to continue sticking with it. Taylor.
So, an interesting side to that. Reboots are really interesting with this thing you're talking about, ease of access with precedent. If it's not a reboot, like you said, sometimes people will watch it for the creative team, very specifically for the actors. And that's a way that big Hollywood movies can make sure that they make enough revenue is by saying, look, we've got this actor that you already love, show up and see this actor, it doesn't matter what the movie's about. And people go to those movies.
A lot of people want to see the Revenant.
See Brad Pitt or Rebecca Cumberbatch. And that's one of the reasons it's harder sometimes to get more diversity in Hollywood. Hollywood's got a really big diversity problem, and that's one of the reasons why. And reboots, unfortunately, I don't think that they've done enough with it, but with Star Wars and Ghostbusters, they're finally starting to figure out that if they're making a reboot of an already popular franchise, they don't necessarily need the star power, so they can introduce new talent. And I think that's really good, and I'm surprised it took us this long to figure it out.
I agree. I personally love the thought of having diversity, especially in older properties. Being like, hey, we want to encourage new voices and attract new demographics of people. And there are stories that are untold because of a narrow mindset. And I feel like having the perspective of listening to other people who are not pretty much same ethnicity, sexuality, gender as you, can offer a lot of, insight into the human spirit. Whether or not you agree with what they're saying is, to me, irrelevant. The fact that you have listened to people who are not yourself is what I think is most important. And I will move on, because there's quite a bit left. Okay, so, comics. We're not going to dwell too much into it, because we're going to be sitting here for the rest of the year. Comics, amazingly enough, don't really do reboots that often. DC had a reboot in 2011 called The New 52, which they famously were like, all of this stuff, we are going to condense all of our continuity. Maybe some stuff we're going to keep to, we're not going to tell you whether or not we are deleting it from continuity or not, and we are condensing it all to 5 years, and we're going to do it all over again. And it caused a lot of problems, especially for Batman right there. Apparently, he trained 4 Robins in 5 years. That's ridiculous. But and they had a lot of problems making the New 52 land. However, it did so well initially. It wasn't as critically received as DC might have hoped for. But the fact is that it got some people into comics. I started reading comics because of the New 52. And I know that's a rarity, so here I am. Marvel, on the other hand, take a step back to DC. Right now, DC is doing a relaunch. There's so many of these words, and deciphering them is really difficult and time-consuming. And that is currently saying it is not a reboot. It never was. So perhaps in a day, this slide will be obsolete and everything I said was just lies. Because they're currently scrapping it all over again and going back to some of the original continuity to ignore the New 52. It's so confusing, Ryan.
Okay, so I'm sorry. The weird thing about the New 52, well, the weird thing about pre-52 is that they would retcon specific historical events for certain characters. Like, they retconned a lot of Hal Jordan's backstory because Jeff Johns took over, and he changed a lot of backstory. And it actually went really well, and that's how I got the comic. But when they did the New 52, they did not change anything about the Green Lantern mythos. Everything was the same. The Guardians were still the same. After Flashpoint, which reset the universe, the comics picked up exactly where the comics left off before.
And that's weird.
It's so weird.
Sorry to cut you off. However, so you would think, okay, so DC has done this like once, and they kind of did it with the Crises. So what about Marvel? Marvel, the closest thing to a reboot was their most recently their Secret Wars event, where they deleted the entire multiverse, and then Doctor Doom became God, and then now he's not God anymore. He's just and they're going all the way to line-wise number ones again, but it's not a reboot, or it's more of a soft relaunch, and oh my god, comics are confusing. And it took me a long time to get into them, and I understand people who are like, comics are confusing, and I try very hard to make it as simple as possible. It's just that complicated. Taylor!
I think that the maybe not comics, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the way that we look at it compared to the comics is a really interesting thing about reviews as well. Because knowing a little bit about the source material can lead to feeling like you've been spoiled for the new movies that haven't come out, or it can lead to speculation and overall finding out if things are done differently, which I think is really, really interesting when you know that things have gone a certain way in the past and see how they adapt it. And when a lot of people don't like reviews because they say that it's too static, it's too similar to the previous versions, but it's seeing what they changed and how that makes it its own interesting piece of work.
So what I love about that, I found my own answer. Before Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, they were implying that they were going to do the famous Gwen Stacy storyline. I'm not going to spoil in case you didn't see the movie, even though it's probably the most important thing that she's known for. Beforehand, they were foreshadowing it a lot, and I was asked, do you think that Gwen Stacy will die? And I had no idea. Even though I know what happened in the comics, I hadn't seen the movie, and I was like, are they going to pull that off? Because there's pros and cons to each, and I went into the movie asking myself if they are going to adapt a certain beat in the comics, and seeing it question marked, was really entertaining for me, both before the movie and during and after. It caused a more entertaining movie experience for myself. So I agree with Taylor 100%. Charlotte.
So, going to this Spider-Man one, just they unfortunately did something that a bunch of comic book readers were like, yeah, they're definitely doing it, including me, because of one thing. Her costume was the exact same as that comic. But Walking Dead handles that really well. And I don't know how much you know about this, but there's actually there was hints to the governor in season 1.
I had noticed that.
Yes. I was having a discussion with Cody last night, actually, remember me. And there's actually hints to a really big thing now going on in the show. I'm obviously not going to talk about it. But it's really cool, and they're like basically like, hey, comic book readers, we know this is a thing, maybe we'll do it, maybe we'll do it.
And I love that. I think that makes it more entertaining for everyone involved. Last point before I move on.
All right, I want your opinion on this because there was a point where comics rebooted something that, all right, so they kind of took away power from the fans. The second Robin, Jason Todd, there
Who
was
is Red Hood, if, now, if anyone doesn't know?
he is now Red Hood, and there was a series back when he was originally first Robin called Death in the Family, where he was beaten with a crowbar and left in an exploding building. Fans were given the option to call in and vote on whether or not they wanted him to live or die. The results were almost unanimous, and Jason Todd died.
That story beat is awesome, and it ties in perfectly to what Starlo was talking about, because in the Batman vs. Superman trailers, they have been implying that they might do the Jason Todd storyline, where the Joker is implied to spray paint on the bat suit, "You let your family die." No, I think it was a newspaper. Sorry, newspaper. "You let your family die," which implies that they might touch on the Jason Todd story. So this is what makes the fan reaction, which is in the previous slide, so prevalent. And moving on to music, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I have nothing to show for it. How can you reboot music? I have no idea, and a lot of you apparently have ideas. My only idea was from a story that Joe told me, so I'm going to ask Joe first.
Oh, I wasn't going to say this. I was going to say it's called a cover.
Yeah.
You see, I thought about that, and I could not decisively decide whether or not I thought covers were a reboot to this songs that they exist in the first place. Yeah.
There's definitely a reboot if you do something like a drastic change. But it's not just you redoing the song exactly the same as close as you can. Like you do a ukulele cover or you do a death metal cover of a an Elvis song. I'm willing to say that's a reboot.
So, in that vein, if I may jump jump mediums for a bit. The movie Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, stabbing knife scene, if you don't know. That movie had a shot-for-shot remake. What do we do with that information?
That's a remake.
That's a remake.
Star Trek did the same thing.
Star Trek did the same thing.
I'm pretty sure that a certain scene in Into Darkness is shot.
Oh no, the entire movie is that. Just recreated. Yeah. They just redid the entire movie with the same shots. And I think it's fascinating. Sure.
It is a remake because I feel like a single movie can't be rebooted because it's more for a franchise, like all this continuity stuff.
Yeah, the precedence is what I was talking about.
Yeah, if it's just a movie, then you cannot.
It's a remake.
Then it's a remake. So Psycho can't be a reboot anyway.
Oh, they had sequels.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, it had sequels.
Oh.
I think they had 3 sequels, and then the shot-for-shot remake, and then Bates Motel.
They also had a movie that was an original story, prequel.
Yeah, Psycho 4.
I don't know.
I don't remember the name. Zachary, last comment before we move on.
Other thing on music, I mean, obviously the Proto Man is story-wise, since you have
Yes.
story-wise, a arguably Mega Man reboot just because it diverges into a place from Mega Man continuity to do its own sort of take on the Mega Man story. But also, in a lot of movie reboots, it'll have arguably either covers of the original soundtrack or reorchestrations or rearrangements of the movie that or in the movie that the previous iteration was known for. Sometimes it's as blatant as when they just sort of blast the Jurassic Park theme at you in Jurassic World, but a lot of the time it's more subtle, more subtly worked in there, almost at the level of like when obviously this is a reboot, but when there's a flash episode of Arrow, they'll work the Flash theme into the background, the standard Arrow background music, or vice versa. Like that level of subtlety, you'll hear some bit of the previous iteration music, or music that the franchise is known for from elsewhere, in the reboot.
So I like that a lot. And Zach was talking about the Proto Men. In case you don't know, they're a band that pretty much makes albums that talk about Mega Man. They have stories to them, which is why I included it there. They pretty much make rock operas or concept albums. The fact is that these albums, instead of being single songs that have nothing to do with each other, they actually tell a coherent story. So my thought was, if we can have pretty much a band that did have albums that have a consistent story for each album, and then have an album that reboots a single, the first album story and does it again, that's probably the closest thing that we can have to a traditional reboot in music. I don't know. I've never seen a band that does that, but Starlo seems really excited.
So what is it a reboot if the storyline in one universe ends? I actually listened to a musician who does concept albums, which is why I'm concept albums, which is why I'm doing stuff. He canonically said the story of this universe is over, next album's a new universe. Makes a new universe. But there is a song that references that the wording of said song is very specifically referencing something in the old universe. Is that a reboot?
That's a great question, and I have no answer to that. What's the name of the band?
It's a project called Arion.
I know them. All right, no, I know them. And this is exactly why I came here with nothing to show, because I thought you guys would have really interesting points, and I was right. So, some minor things. Well, what about sequel relaunches, which ties into Star Wars? Movies that are pretty much set a certain amount of time in the future, that while all the continuity wasn't deleted, it's pretty much an entire status quo of new stories being told. Star Wars isn't the only example, but it's pretty much the one you guys know the most. Also, Mad Max Fury Road is a great example of this. Is it a reboot? Because, like, technically it's still supposed to be in the same continuity, even though no one talks about it, but it's set in the future? How does that work?
Mad Max, though, he actually doesn't know if it's in the same continuity.
Which I think is interesting.
Well, George Miller said that all of the Mad Max stories, they're more legends than actual events. So
it's like an anthology series.
Yeah, so this is just one legend of Mad Max that may have taken place before the other ones. Most likely, most of the movies never happened, which is good if you hate Thunderdome. And so it's kind of weird, because if it's based off of the legends, is that an adaptation or a remake, or just enters a whole new area?
That's really fascinating. And moving on, because we are kind of running out of time. Adaptations, we talked about this in great detail, so I'm going to move on. Americanized versions. Is Dragon Ball Evolution, I think it's the same movie, is that a reboot? Is Quarantine, if you guys have seen the found footage movie Quarantine, which is American version of REC or REC, is that a reboot, even though it is pretty much doing the same story again, but in an American version of it? Not quite shot for shot, but they're still trying to tell the same story, and then they branch off differently. How does that work? I think that's fairly interesting. Taylor has something to say.
There's a really good example of this. Queer as Folk was originally a British miniseries. It was directed by RTD Davies, who did the first 4 seasons of the New Doctor movie, far ahead of time. There's an American version of it that went on for like 6 seasons or something, and it's completely different, except for they take the main 3 characters and they transplant them into Pittsburgh instead of into where they originally were, and change their names, but they're the same characters. Also, they changed that the guy who was a Doctor Who fan is now a comic book fan. And they changed one specific line from Lois Lane and Superman to Titanic. It's a cool, interesting American character.
That reminds me of, not Scrubs, I'm sorry, Skins. That's what I was looking for. Yes, I'm sorry?
I just want to remind you, it gets Ghostbusters, so, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm almost certain it's the next slide. And people just have a lot of things to say about everything, which is great. I love that.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was originally a radio show, then made into a series of books that surpassed the radio show, and then there was a BBC series that was made almost exactly like the books, and then there was a movie with Martin Freeman that was...
Don't forget the text adventure.
The text adventure, which was also a lot like the books and was impossible to win. And also the movie, which people said wasn't enough like the books, but was still an entertaining movie. That's a whole can of worms.
That ties in multiple of these. So these things aren't mutually exclusive. They tie in together and to make the giant mess that is trying to categorize what counts as a reboot, what doesn't count, how does the definitions work. My definition doesn't include everything. There's definite holes in mine, but I try to address like the source of the issue.
I feel like Hitchhikers is a series of
adapting the original radio play into different medias, like constantly, because there's been books and been movies and TV shows. There's a text adventure apparently. I've heard of that. But. And whether or not Dungeon Island actually is involved in any of them is, I mean, it's up in the air.
Last one for you. Move on.
So, how do you feel about a series that bills itself as a sequel, but entirely reinvents, not the character, the characters are the same, but the themes and the tone changes, specifically Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2013 versus Teenage Mutant Ninja, or not 2013, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2003 cartoon, turned into Fast Forward, and then when they went back to the present, it completely changed the tone of the show.
I would say definitively maybe.
All right, on that note, today they announced a new show that's crossing over with the 80s show.
I don't even know what to make of that.
But they already did that.
I am not going to open that kind of words, and I'm so confused. Also, reimaginings, games do this a lot, trying to capture the spirit of an original game, but not necessarily rebooting or remaking it. My personal favorite example is Silent Hill Shattered Memories, where they try to tell the story of the original game, however, in such a radically different context that I think is fascinating. And lastly, general oddities that just don't fit into any of this. I had a giant list of them, and I am not gonna, what?
Honestly, at its core, what the hell are they doing?
Well, I was supposed to have the Ghostbusters live before this, but the future, this is a small sample of what's to come. What? Oh yeah, I tried to make sure that all of these are completely accurate. I found sources for all of them. These are all happening, and there's even more.
I'm pretty sure the Men in Black one isn't actually a reboot. It is a sequel that is also a crossover with the Jump Street franchise.
They are doing it, and it's also a trilogy without Will Smith, because they couldn't get him to sign. No, they couldn't get him to sign on, so they're going to be like, we're just going to redo it all over again. It's very confusing, and this is why I love it. And now we're finally going to talk about Ghostbusters.
Why would we do that?
All right, so.
I'm so excited.
When the shit's showing up?
No, I'm actually excited for this.
Man, there's so much to talk about.
right here.
All right. Where do we get to?
I'll go to the fourth right here.
She seems peaceful. I mean, there's Aaron North talking about her position. Let's get remember, by the way, Aaron crack. Very hard to walk. We've dedicated our whole lives to studying the paranormal. Now we're studying it all over the city. There are people out there that leave our house. Paulson, you're a brilliant engineer. Eric, no one's better at quantum physics than you. We can provide a real service.
You know what? You guys are really smart about this science stuff, but I know New York. And I can borrow a car from my uncle.
You just thought that the vehicle was going to be a curse. It's a Cadillac! Let's go. Let's go. I'll let you guys. Someone's creating a device that amplifies paranormal activity. You might be the only ones who can stop it. Hold this. Come on. Because, you know, right? Is it weird? There's a bigger picture in hand here. These ghosts can possess the human form. Oh, hell no, the devil is alive! Get out of my friend! Get out!
Okay, So, before anything, I want to make a quick comment. I want to make a quick comment on what interests me the most about this Ghostbusters reboot. Even though in the very first lines of the trailer they said that like 30 years prior, four scientists like saved New York City, the directors and everyone involved in the project are still saying that the continuity is gone. So this trailer is pretty much saying, hey, remember all that stuff that's happened? Even though in this continuity it doesn't happen. And what makes this even more fascinating is that every single person who's alive from the original cast is going to appear in this movie as an unrelated role. They're all cameo appearances for roles that have nothing to do with in the original, which is weird and confusing, and I have no idea how to make of that. There's so many layers to unpack of this, which is why I want to talk about it. And I know you all have been dying to talk about the Ghostbusters reboot trailer. You want to say something?
No.
Oh, you were the one who was trying to.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, what I'm saying is that I do want to say that it disappoints me so much because the originals were so good, and this is just like everything that I didn't want in a trailer is in the trailer.
I am one of the few people who like Ghostbusters 2, and I wasn't a fan of this trailer. I still have hope for the movie, but, kind of tempered my expectations a bit. Go.
Very disappointed by this trailer. It kind of has that cash grab glaze to it, in a way.
The piano keys, too.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's a unique idea. I think that's a unique idea, but it kind of has like glaze to it. I kind of wish they did an extreme Ghostbusters instead or something like that.
I like the idea that they're trying to do it with women because I like the idea that they're trying to do it with women because there's no reason to see men. I just don't like most of the actors they cast.
It's just Bridesmaids too. They're using the same creative team, so go.
Yep.
What's actually the costume made?
Oh my god.
I would be.
I'd be so excited.
If the Ghostbusters reboot is in the same continuity as Bridesmaids, I will be very happy about that. And I'd watch Bridesmaids.
I mean, to be fair, they took the opening. They're like, hey, what if we make people nostalgic about the old one and use piano, like a really quiet piano rendition of the theme, which is exactly right out of the Jurassic World trailer.
It is.
No for no.
No for no. Go.
So, well, I'm not a fan of the trailer, like, besides that. I am kind of bothered that this is a reboot, because I don't think there's a reason for it to be, personally.
I agree completely.
Because it's like, there's only 2 movies in a video game, which I don't know if that's canon. And
no, wait.
They wrote it as if it wasn't canon, but they might as well not be canon for
the
the
animated series. Harold Ramis, before he died, actually said that the video game is actually basically Ghostbusters 3.
Yes, I remember hearing that.
I do like that it is basically that, but either way, the old Ghostbusters canon, regardless of its canon in this movie, had so little to it, so rebooting it is almost a waste.
The way I see it is that they could have called this a sequel and just not have included cameos by all the other actors, and I would have been very happy about it. But the fact that they are making it, doing the same story again, however, including the old characters from the old show, but just to have them do something completely different, to me is kind of almost insulting in a way. Just being like, not only that we could have totally gone away with being a sequel, but we're just going to be a reboot and just, piss in your cornflakes. Zach.
I'm particularly annoyed about it not being, or about it being a reboot if it is a reboot. I like that the trailer leaves the door open for them to change that decision. I don't know, because obviously
it's done. The movie's over.
No, we don't know this yet. So I'm like, maybe they're lying, but I recognize this is like almost at the level of maybe Donald Trump is doing this all as a joke. I'm not expecting it to happen, but it would be really nice because. So like everyone who talks to me knows, I've been really pushing for let's have less reboots and sequels and more spin-offs.
I love that idea spin-offs.
More do more in the same universe. It's why I'm one of the few people who still didn't vote for Metroid Prime Federation Force. It's why, even though I haven't gotten to it yet because I'm way behind on that series, I'm happy Halo 3 ODST exists. People have built these rich universes. Let's tell stories about more than one person in them. And the original Ghostbusters left the door open for other Ghostbuster teams to exist in other places around the world, because But like that is, at least as I recall, that was like something that they suggested. Not only did they leave the door open for, they suggested that would come to happen. And how many, like, I know other people disagree. I really like how this cast looks, and I'm excited to see them as Ghostbusters, and the only reason I'm against this movie's existence is that they're trying to retcon out a really good setup for this movie to exist.
I agree 1,000%. To me, like that goes back to my point of the fact that they could have just had this be a sequel and like barely change anything. That it's like they are insisting that it's a reboot, and I think that's fascinating. The fact that they can have goodwill of just being like, hey, we're just continuing the old story, even though we're not addressing all the other stuff. No, it has to be a reboot, and I think that's the question of why to me is the interesting one, Joe.
Like you said, the only place that experimented with other teams was the tabletop role-playing game, which I guess no one played, because no one plays tabletop role-playing games anyway. It's very few people, and very few people play the Ghostbuster one. So, like that's the only place I explored the other teams in other areas, and so why couldn't it be this exact team, not a reboot, in like put it in Europe? That'd be really cool.
I'd watch it. Taylor, two more people after Taylor, and then we are wrapping it up.
So it's really interesting. So Ghostbusters is, like you said, working off of the brand recognition of Ghostbusters. But if what you're saying is true, and they're insisting that it must be a reboot, even though there's no reason for it to be a reboot, do you think that they assume that there's a certain amount of brand value in the idea of a reboot? Which is bizarre to me because everything we've heard is like reboots are getting stale. Well, so why would you want to say this is a reboot?
I don't have an answer for you. And that is why, out of all of the movies that I could have had as a trailer here, I chose the Ghostbusters one, not only because it was recent, and it's a great example. It's a great example of everything I've talked about, is that they are insisting on it. And the fact, when people try to ask them, oh, it's a sequel, they're like, no, it is a reboot. And they are sticking to it. So I think that they see some capital idea in the fact of it being a reboot makes more money, which I think is interesting. And it goes, I don't know what that says about the American public, but I think it's fascinating. Ryan.
I was just going to say that I think it would be even more interesting if it wasn't a reboot and they didn't change anything. That over the course of 30 years, New York City had essentially forgotten the Ghostbusters.
that was Ghostbusters 2.
And, well, yeah, but Ghostbusters 2 was played for laughs. This would be a lot more interesting where 30 years has passed and everyone just kind of forgot about the Ghostbusters, and now they're coming back. Also, it feels really weird because I don't know if they're doing it on purpose, but it feels like they're trying to reboot, not just make a more modern version of Ghostbusters, but like still have that old school technology feel. Like, it feels like they're using 80s technology,
and
which just bothers me.
Someone had their hand up in the back? All right, last comment before we wrap it up.
One thing that sort of bothers me is that this reboot seems to be reducing all that made Ghostbusters, because what made Ghostbusters for me was A, the ghost and the Ghostbusters, but B, the sort of love letter to small business and that whole Reagan era anti-regulation and how the regulators are the snobby people.
Okay, they make that EPA guy the bad guy again.
And that would be hilarious.
and also the New York dating scene and stuff like that. When I look at this trailer, I'm seeing a lot less than what I saw in the original Ghostbusters. It's the superficial elements of what people thought Ghostbusters was about, the brand recognition element, without anything added other than a female cast. And even with a female cast, they don't seem to be doing anything particularly different with that. Anything that would make this cast significantly different than the previous cast.
But they had
what is new
body
about
jokes.
this Ghostbusters that isn't just done more than in the previous Ghostbusters?
The story looks very different from the trailer.
In fact, the story is different, and they're going to go a different way with it, which makes the idea of a reboot so confusing. And Justin, and final comment.
Take the fight to the EPA.
That's true, the EPA.
No! Will they lose as police officers again?
Alright, so that's that. My name is Mario Truman, and it was a pleasure having you all. I love talking about this, and I love talking with you guys. If you are interested in hearing me speak more, I'm having a panel at both ToraCon and StarFest, which panel submissions are still open for StarFest. So if you're interested in having a podium and talking at people, I totally recommend it. And so if you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts, you are more than welcome to join me in those panels. Or follow me on Twitter. I will talk about literally anything. And I love you all, and that's it for me.
Great, let's hear it from Mario.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all next week when we're going to be talking about science fiction government with Michael Cooper. Keep rocking. Shirts! 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 If you pre-ordered a shirt and didn't get it, come see me or any of the other Bridge Crew. Bridge Crew, raise your hand. If you want to buy shirts, I was literally. If you want to buy a shirt, please talk to Jenny. Jenny, raise both hands. Good job. Goodbye, internet. Well, that's one way to close up.